Nearly 50 years ago, the Mission Inn, iconic landmark of Riverside, was under threat of demolition. In a series of failed attempts to keep the inn profitable, the property has been used as a mixed-purpose space, including resident housing. Our guests, Rex Jackson and Nancy Jones, were the last two residents to call the Mission Inn home. Their fight against the threat of eviction helped delay the impending destruction of the hotel, buying time for a citizens group in the City of Riverside to step in and save the Mission Inn. In 1976, the Redevelopment Agency purchased the property, and the Mission Inn Foundation was formed to manage the newly acquired hotel. And so we are here today. The Mission Inn Foundation now serving as museum, promoter, and historian for this iconic hotel. If anything I told you was a lie, they're going to correct it now.
Oh, yeah, hard.
Now, welcome our guests, Rex and Nancy.
Thank you, Terry. If any lies are discussed this evening, you can.
He can't hear you.
I think they can't.
Hold it up to your little mouth.
She's always a teacher. But anyway, for any fact checks to anything Nancy and I might say, you can fact check it with Brenda Jackson. She was one of our colleagues in crime all these years past, and she lived here as well. So anyway, please keep us on point, Brenda. Okay. Jared?
They gave you some things, I think.
I'm going to ask Jared.
I'm here.
I see you in the back, but where do you want me to start? Because I can ramble real fast, and I don't want to do that. But,
Well, why don't you start your two about...
He asked her what brought us here. Yeah. I have the different glasses on.
Microphone.
Go ahead. Ladies first.
Oh, thank you. I don't know if it makes it, I'm probably louder than the mic is. But one of the questions was what brought us to the, well, first of all, my family goes way back. We are native Riversiders. My father was the head football and baseball coach for 30 years at Poly, and he is now in the Hall of Fame. Wonderful man, raised a lot of kids that you probably know. But we were always here. We always ran around down here when he was at school. And I don't know if you know or not, but the outside hallways didn't just have plants and our little macaw friends. They had parrots and canaries out there. And all the kids from school would walk through here and play with the birds and talk to them and all the flowers and whatnot. And I think, and even then, those were just the waning years of Aunt Alice, and Brenda lived in Aunt Alice's suite. She lived in a full-blown house. And I don't know, people don't realize that on the 4th floor, those are homes and suites, as well as a room here and there, because the train would bring out the very wealthy people from New York, and they would stay on the 4th floor for 6 months, and then they go back home again, and then they'd be out again. So as long as they were alive, they were guaranteed those rooms, and that's how it happened. And so one lucky, I mean, this could have been anybody, but my friend Denise, who was a counselor at Rubidoux at the same time I was teaching at Rubidoux, we knew Phil, who was the innkeeper at that time, and they were allowing on the other floors 20 students from UCR to stay because they didn't have enough of the dorms ready.
Is that George?
So they stayed on the 2nd and 3rd floors. So he said, but we have some vacancies on the 4th floor. If you would like to stay on the 4th floor, we'll let you stay on the 4th floor. So for a huge, gigantic suite, and Brenda's mini loft bedroom, huge thing. we stayed up there. She paid $200 and we paid $190 a month, and daily maid service. And oh, I'm sorry, Brenda.
Do you remember Irene, the head maid?
Yeah.
Here?
He did anything for me.
Yeah.
Well, you should have asked them. And we all snuck our animals in. In fact, while I'm on now, I'll forget otherwise. We were allowed to have a bird and a fish, or a bird and fish. So okay, so about 2 years later, if you remember, we had a big fire on the second floor, it was in the paper. And everybody had to go down to the lobby and just go down and get out of their way. And there wasn't a bird or fish in the mob. There were snakes and dogs and cats and, oh my Lord. I mean, iguanas, we had everything. And so they did a big thing in the press on that because no one obeyed. But that was so wonderful. But we were brought here just because we just happened to be in the right place at the right time, looking for a place. And I've always loved hotel living. To this day, I know that I will do my last days in a hotel. I like it. And it was just wonderful to get up every day and eat down in the Spanish dining room and then go to school 10 minutes away and come back and it was wonderful. Everybody would jump in our pool and they'd come off the street, take their clothes off and then dive in at night, and we had so many, it was no big deal, it was great. And same with the UCR students, they were wonderful to be around too. And so that's what brought us here. It was just being in the right place at the right time. And we had a couple of more coach friends of ours that were with us at the same time. But the nice thing was, Brenda was on this end, but on our end, if you opened up all of our doors straight down the line, all the suites on the 4th floor would go right into the next suite. So everybody knew everybody. You could open them up, they could go in and out at will or bang on the door or whatever. And we had a couple of doctors living up there. We had Rex will tell you about a retired Burlington guy that was dressed for every meal. That was what's so fun. The older people, which we are now, the older people just dressed to the nines. I mean, they were just ready for dinner. You never just showed up in anything but the best. And it was so wonderful. Everybody was different.
What year, Nancy? Tell them what year?
What year?
Oh,
Should have been
I'm trying to remember.
1971,
Yeah, because
thereabouts. I moved in September of 1970 is when I moved to the inn.
and I was here before. So Denise and I came in that summer.
The dorms didn't
Be
accommodate
something-
kids.
That's pretty close.
It would have been 1970.
Yeah, and then we stayed until they had to close it for renovation.
Yeah.
And we got a lot of years out of that. We were supposed to be renovated immediately, like 71. So we didn't care. We told them, just tell us, we've only got our clothes. And so we were here 6 or 7 years, quite a while. And it was horrible. It was horrible leaving. I can't tell you how horrible it was. It was so horrible that we even defended ourselves in court that we didn't want to go.
I'll get to that
And
in a
Rex will
second.
tell you that part, yeah. So anyway, basically that's when it was. I had already been teaching probably a long time. Let's see, 65, maybe 7 or 8 years by then.
Let me jump in here, babe.
Go ahead.
First and foremost, thank Jared for inviting us out. How this came about is really funny. Dear friend of mine, a high school coach, he and his wife are part of the foundation, and there was a function in May here at the inn, and I called to get tickets to that function and somehow said to my friend, make sure we sit with you. And she couldn't confirm that would happen. So I said, well, how do I make that happen? And she made the reference, you've got to hit base with Jared. At which point, I got his email address and left a message. He called, we spoke, and I started talking about the Mission Inn. Just a real simple, casual conversation, just, 3 months ago. And I think Jared thought I probably was a stalker or some lunatic, because I started telling him stories about the Mission Inn. And at which point, we came to the event in May. That's when we met first face-to-face. And he said, Rex, we'd like this thing to happen. And here we are tonight. So my hat's off to Jared for making the invitation, extending the invitation. And Nancy and I have been looking really forward to being here tonight. So with that said, I was born and raised right here in Riverside, and talking about family, it seems like there is family in this room tonight.
Everybody knows everybody.
I met Dan Hampton and his wife, Marcia. They were my mother's next door neighbors in Canyon Crest for about 20 some odd years. And of course, Brenda, we lived next to her here at the inn. Susie Clem, her husband, she was dating her husband at the first time I met Susie, and I was in the 9th grade at Rubidoux High School. And I don't know where Susie lived, but her husband Gary was my freshman baseball coach in high school. So it's crazy, and I rarely see Gary, but it seems we see Susie all around town in passing. And then again, I met Crystal a moment ago, and she was a student of my aunt, my father's brother's wife at Arlington High School. So you start talking to people, and it's amazing what you find out and how closely related we are, just with strangers that you would anticipate know nothing about. Tony O'Neill, she was telling me about the days that she ditched high school, and when I asked how was she now a docent here, she said she fell in love because when she didn't want to go to school, she and her girlfriends would come here to the Mission Inn 9,000 years ago. So it's crazy. It wasn't that many years ago. I'm sorry, Tony.
Just tell him you're getting a history lesson.
And then, maybe a month ago, we're at our friend's business in Crestline, and we meet this stranger, Evie, and we started talking, and she's telling us she's doing an internship as a docent at the Mission Inn. Complete stranger 2 months ago, never met her, and here she is tonight, and again, talking with her, just having met her, she says, well, I want to come and hear this story. So here she is again tonight, and I've never met this woman, and I feel like I am being stalked with Evie. But anyway, it's nice and it's fun. I graduated from high school in 1970, June, went away to play baseball, came back home in September, and growing up in West Riverside, I never wanted to go back home. I had a great, great life. Sort of the Walter Mitty, what was it?
And a great education.
Right. Andy of Mayberry. It really was idyllic growing up in those days. Everybody was family in our neighborhood. But when I left, played baseball, came back home, started school, I didn't want to go back home. I wanted to sort of flex my wings, having been across the country playing in minor league baseball for a few months. And so I moved to the Mission Inn. I had a paper out at the age of 10, the Press Enterprise. And by the way, Tony, what was Tony's last name? His father owned the newspaper.
No, Culver.
Tony Culver, yeah,
He was
Mr.
in the
Culver.
room next to ours on the other side.
Yeah, that's how I met Mr. Culver, Tony and his father, who owned
We
the
had
Press
quite a
Enterprise.
bunch up
So
there.
you just met all of these nice, wonderful people. And Tony Culver. And ultimately, as it turned out, and as a paper carrier, when we'd finish our paper routes on Sunday mornings, all my buddies from the West Riverside area, we'd ride our bikes across the bridge from West Riverside to the Mission Inn. This was the place to be. You had the old bakery shop on Main Street.
Bakes, drugstore.
What was the couple, the German couple?
John Marr.
John Marr.
Oh,
John,
yeah.
yes,
Oh.
John Marr Bakery, Blackstone's Magic Shop, Banks Pharmacy. That's when you could buy a malt shake for, I think, 15 cents. And we'd belly up to the counter and we'd, put our quarter on the counter and we'd sit there for 3 hours eating this malt shake, that was served in the metal tin can. But fun stuff. Then we'd come over to the inn. And I felt like I was at Disneyland. And it was just 5 minutes across the river from Rubidoux. And we'd ride around on our bicycles, and I just fell in love. And it's truly been a love story. Nancy mentioned it's the innkeeper. When we first moved here, the gentleman's name, I believe, was George and Rose.
It's Phil, because they named his pub after him.
No, that was the name. It was George and, Rose. Georgia Rose Parrish. George and
That's
Rose
right.
Parish.
But I thought it was, oh,
They
it was Phil's Pub,
They
yeah.
bought the Phil's Pub
I thought
in
that's real.
Redlands when they left here.
He was wonderful.
They were from England, and George was a strapping 6'5" English gentleman with white hair, a white mustache, always wore a vest, impeccably dressed.
And Ruffles.
And Rose Parish, his wife, they were the innkeepers. And they would sit in the lobby, and it was just this regal couple. And mind you, again, coming from West Riverside and being a homespun product, these were folks I thought were royalty. And I found out they were the innkeepers once I had moved in. Got to know them, and they were, again, like family. They just, do you remember that, Brenda? Do you remember George and Rose Parish?
I don't.
You don't? They were before Sandra Hartness and the group, the Neals from San
Oh, yeah.
Francisco.
That's right.
When the Neal family came in, and that's when they predeceded, they were predecessors to the Neal family from San Francisco. But that's when we got really the run of the Mission Inn with George and Rose, because they were just a very, very engaging couple. And then, of course, folks started moving in on a long-term basis, college students, etc. And I was commuting from Riverside here at the inn to Cal Poly Pomona, going to college. So I was in school 3 days a week, and the 2 days I wasn't in school, I was across the street at the library studying. So that was another strategic reason I wanted a home here. And it was every day coming home on a vacation, paradise. It was not unusual to find a film being filmed upstairs on the 4th floor. The Hollywood group would be out several weeks. I recall Raquel Welch being in the doorway of my apartment, and I had to excuse myself to get in, and around her entourage. But anyway, just fascinating things that always went on. So that's how I wound up coming to the Mission Inn. Yeah. And stayed, just refused to leave, literally.
Our cat started sleeping with Raquel Welch every night. So we had to go and find our cat. But he was very happy there. But it was, they were, I'd say several times a year, not just for movies, but other things they were doing. They would all use our end of the patio there. They sometimes would use the pond area that's up there now where Brenda was, and then they always used our pond area where the rotunda is.
Right.
And so we'd come home and have a note on our door: sorry for the inconvenience, go down, order whatever you want to eat and drink, and we'll be another couple of hours. And it was just like, oh, I could do that, no problem. And then the cola guy, there's a book written about that, about the murder and whatever. The cola guy lived on our side of the 4th floor, and he was always getting our cat and taking it in and feeding it and trying to keep our kitty.
Not the
so we would
Coca-Cola
find
guy.
our cat all the time.
Not the Coca-Cola guy. This was the radio station.
Kola, that guy.
Yeah.
First of all.
And,
Well, he got murdered.
he'd say, the cat's not here, and of course there'd be milk all over the place, and the kitty would come out with milk on his, it was ridiculous, but it was fun. And then the other one we had another big cat. He would always go up on the 3rd floor and sleep. This guy, he had a pacemaker, and he would sleep on his chest. And so one day he came over and he goes, you gotta keep that cat out of my room. I said, well, how does he get in? Well, I don't know, but you gotta keep him out. So one night I went over there, and he leaves the door open just ajar that the kitty can come in, milk, food, water. And then, of course, he's on his chest. They love the ticking. And oh my Lord. But it was just fun. It was really great. I mean, those cats ate well with the kitchen right beneath them. But it was just, everybody was so different. Every career, it was just amazing. And then Rex was always our Santa Claus at Christmas. Every Christmas we had a big party.
Yeah, all the residents and the employees, we would celebrate in the Glenwood Tavern, and we'd exchange Christmas gifts. And annually, I was the Santa Claus, so I was sort of the Barack Obama of the Santa Claus genre. But it was a big family. That was the fun thing about it. Just so many different people, literally from all around the world. Nance had mentioned the one gentleman, Mr. Peters. Brenda, do you recall Mr. Peters? This was early
He was
on.
always dressed in a fancy suit.
He would be at the door on the south side of the inn, going out towards the McCall cage, in a three-piece suit. Between he and George Parrish, these gentlemen, you'd swear they just stepped out of a men's magazine. Mr. Peters was the CEO of the Packard Automobile Company.
Wow.
And he would spend his summers, his spring and summers, at the Mission Inn. And I would just sit and talk and ask tons of questions about the automobile industry. And this man was just so accommodating. And again, he would literally stay here for a 6-month stint. For several years, he would come out. He would have his dinner served, etc., his lunch, all of his breakfasts, and you met all of these different people. George and Rose Parrish, Mr. Peters, and it was another gentleman, Jack Reef. He came out from, God, I remember these names like yesterday now, but he came out from Minnesota, and he had a health condition. I think it was a respiratory challenge of some sort, and the weather, he would come out. He loved the weather, of course, as opposed to Minnesota. I don't know if he was close to International Falls or not, but I do recall it was Minnesota. And his son would come out and spend half the summer with him, but he didn't drive. And during my summer break from school, here I was with old man Mr. Reef, who wore big cowboy boots and a big hat, and I had a little sports car, and I had a cane, and I'd pick up a few extra bucks buzzing around town, making, on his errands, running his personal errands with him, and being his Uber driver, I guess, at that time. But just gems of just beautiful human beings. And when his son would come out, he would refer to me as his son. Just, again, just family type relationships that were special.
But that was, I also noticed on here, something you don't know. We'd be here all night if we told you what you don't know about the inn, but and some things that we can't tell you.
A lot of things
Because
we can't tell.
in those days, the elevators, we only had two. They were real small now because they split them in half. But we only had the two big elevators, and then we would take them down to the catacombs and lock them in. So people didn't like that
We'd
very well.
lock the elevators so they wouldn't
Down
go
while
up
we're
and down.
there, and then we would spend all
Hours,
evening and down in where the museum is and where the wax part of the museum. Part of it's still there, but nothing like it used to be. The inn had a full wax museum underneath, and it was in excellent shape, really good shape until they closed it down, and it was never really that good again, but it's there. And then his bell collection, Frank Miller's bell collection, of course, is down there, and it goes everywhere. Oh my God, hundreds of bells from around the world. And then big barbershop chairs, you've probably seen those, but it's too bad that the docents can't get down into that anymore. Nobody can. And they closed all that one door that goes off down when you go down to the music room, and you go to that one door that has a big lock on it, doesn't look too obvious, was that little trail that for years would, if you follow it far enough, it'll go to Mount Rubidoux. That was cute. I love it. That was always the story. Always.
The story.
Yeah.
How far does it go?
Corona.
It was just no, it was just enough to escape, because see, when we moved in, that was the most fun thing. When we moved in, they had to switch all the phones. They had to get the phones up to par, because we had 80-year-old trunks down there, and you could hear whenever they came to fix anything that goes to our room that was a phone, you could hear them cussing all over the guys, and we've got to change these out. So eventually they spent several days to go down and change them out. And, oh, it was a mess. But the reason it was a mess is because, remember, this is where, during the Spanish War, they had the generals and the big guns stayed here and in San Diego and part of LA. And so those are the stagecoach stops.
Right.
So they never changed them out. They were still so old, and they had to have, like if I was in room 80, they would put 63, and then room 63 would be 12, and then they had a code, and so nobody would know where these officers were. I mean, the history was just unbelievable. It just goes on and on and on and on. But you didn't get it unless you lived here, because you would run into people who knew someone who lived here when they were very elderly at the time and had the stories. But it just seems like you're always finding something new. And when you go down to the catacombs, they now, of course, since that one Halloween thing several years ago, they cleaned them up really well. They scrubbed all the blue tile and all that. They really did a nice job and let everybody down there. But it's, before that, we were the only ones that went down in there, the ones of us that lived there, and the water would drip down, and I thought, oh gosh, we're all just gonna die in here. It's very creepy and very big, and I have a couple of ledger books I found under 6th Street, because it's all connected there. All the streets here are connected underneath if you walk far enough. There's one big giant hole, and that's where all the heating, when in the late 80s, late 1980s, 1880s, that's when the heating all came out of the Mission Inn. The steam heating came from here to spread around town in the right downtown area. So it's still like a big giant hole. They just don't let anybody down there anymore. But it's so weird to have these ledgers that show, $1 a night for the rooms, things that are just unbelievable, just that long. So that's amazing. I just love that part of it.
Oftentimes, on the trips to the catacombs, we'd have friends come over to the inn over the weekend or so, and we would go through, and we'd find all the old furnishings. And again, invariably, there was very little security, and since we were residents, we could easily take furnishings out of the catacombs right up to our apartments. So we were consistently changing out the interior decorations
Our Louis
in
the
our
16th.
apartments to various types of furnishings,
Expensive stuff.
depending on what we decided we wanted this week, or during the summer months or the winter months. But it was, again, a lot of fun, because we just had a run of all of the old pieces of stuff
hers
that
was
were around the inn.
She had Aunt Alice's suite, and that was set. You didn't mess with that. I mean, she was the last living relative of Frank Miller. And she was, if you saw Brenda's front door, that little dinky door,
Yeah, you're familiar
precious.
with that. And
Every
Alice's
little
suite?
door in this inn is because of her. Teeny, teeny, tiny. And that's where she lived. So hers was all set. Nobody would change that.
I would have to keep my door locked, because inevitably somebody would try the doors and they would walk in my front room.
And
Yeah,
you could barely walk through the doors, as you well know.
yeah.
I mean, Aunt Alice's suites, the doors are very, very small.
Well, short,
Well, short, thank you.
yes.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
I had the duck.
But it was basically a home. It was one of the few,
No
a home,
kitchen.
and same, as you know, with the Alhambra suite. But on the other side, people don't realize we have a couple of 1 and 2 bedroom homes along that line too. They just close up every now and then. And then the big bell thing out the back, I guess the docents probably have it on there, is where they kept prisoners if they wait for the next sheriff to pick them up. They would put them in that big, the thing that looks like a prison up there on the 4th floor. It's up on the 4th floor, right by where you live, Brenda. That big
Oh, the dome?
round thing with the iron, wrought
That's now,
iron.
I think, a suite. It's a marriage suite or
No, that's
something.
next to it. That's next to it. But it's still
Parker
there.
Dome?
But they would that's where they kept prisoners until they could get the guys out from the county to come and take them out of there. Yeah, it was good. And then also, I don't know if you knew, I don't know, because I don't know what they do in the docent thing, but do they tell him that he would take his trips and bring back what he wanted to bring back, and that's what he built the room around?
Oh, yes.
He brought back his furniture, and then he decided how he wanted it to look. That's why we have so many different looking rooms. No room is exactly, it is now more, but when we were here,
Yeah.
no room was alike. They were all different, every one of
Yeah,
them.
Very
Yeah.
different, yeah, very distinguishable, just different.
It was, yeah, just amazing, and I'm just trying to think. Oh, Brenda, do the docents now tell them when they took all the decorations off of the fireplaces in the front, and those didn't used to be like that. During World War II, in the main lobby, the fireplaces were all deco. Everything was deco in the inn during the 40s and the 50s, very deco. And it wasn't until Dwayne remodeled that he put them back the way they were, and that's why you see that skinny little used brick fireplace by the women's restroom right there. That was always behind a deco wall, as was the other one. And yeah, it was just little things that a lot of things were hidden on style and actually to protect because of the war. They were never sure what was going to happen and what was going to be going down, and it's all I can figure is they prepared for it. But that was the nice thing about having an innkeeper. He just knew everything, and he would have the paper. He would go out by the pool and leave the newspapers out there for us, and then he'd order hot rolls and coffee for us, just because. And it was wonderful.
Sounds pretty nice.
But Rex,
It was nice.
go ahead.
When did you leave?
I'm sorry?
When did you leave?
There were questions?
The question was, when did we leave? I was just gonna go to that. Thank
We
you,
didn't
Marcia.
want to, and when we left, it was horrible. We were the last ones to leave.
And friends of ours, because we come back every December, during the month of December, we literally check into one of the suites and we celebrate Christmas here for 2 weeks. Again, friends, family, it's just a special place, and we exchange all of our gifts. This is where we spend Christmas holidays. But anyway, when did we leave? When the inn was going through several different ownerships, Marcia, George and Rose Parrish, the innkeepers, when they moved out, the Neal family from San Francisco bought it. They were in the hotel business in San Francisco. And this would have been approximately 1972, 73 maybe.
Something like that, it's gotta be, yeah,
And
probably 70s.
The state at the time was trying to preserve quite a few different historical landmarks throughout the state. And the Neal family apparently somehow acquired the inn. It's a very small family. In fact, the sister of the owner, Elizabeth, I believe was her
Right,
name.
yes.
And what was her husband's name?
She lived right
Bill
across from
or
Brenda.
Sam?
The last name was Harbinger.
Well, Hartness, Sandra Hartness
Yes,
was the general
Harkness,
manager.
yeah.
Yeah, I don't think she was related to the Neals.
No.
But Elizabeth was the sister of the owner, Dudley Neal or something like this. But anyway,
K-N-I-L-L.
right. As it turns out, the state wanted to preserve more facilities through along the coastline, if I'm not mistaken. And at that time, the Neal family story was took a lot of equity out of the building here and started buying several old hotels along the Pacific Coast Highway.
Santa Monica.
A dear friend of ours, Kathy Green, if you might
She
recall.
managed that one.
She went to manage that for them. But anyway, so they hit some, speed bumps in the road, the Neal family, with some other projects away from the Mission Inn. Ultimately, they lost it. after several years of a battle or court battles. And then, of course, it started going through some difficult times financially. At that point, we started getting notices. The residents, the full-time residents, started getting notices from, I believe, the development agency or some of the, yes, it was the development agency. And notices to vacate, to leave.
Wow.
And we just sort of kept our ears to the ground to keep on top of what was coming down the road. And we would hear all these different stories. So by the time we got the notice to vacate, we would receive them from the marshal or whoever served them, and we just tossed them.
But eventually, he would see us and then he'd turn around and walk away. He's like, I can't give you guys these.
So this occurred once, it occurred again. We kept throwing them away, we received them. Go ahead, Brenda.
One time they chained the doors so we couldn't get in.
That's right.
Somebody said, some strapping attorney or something said, that's not legal.
Yeah, yeah.
So they called the sheriffs and unchained it.
We constantly were fighting. I think that's the one characteristic I grew up with.
But we were all in it together. Everybody
Yeah,
did.
it was a good
Nobody
cause.
did anything but it.
We weren't going anywhere. We were one happy family. So the second and third event was quite similar to what Brenda described. The final event, they said you have 48 hours to get the heck out. And about that time, there was chicken wire on each corner of this building, on each side, north, south,
Well,
west,
you all
east.
saw it if you live here.
And again, 1 block north, there were 2 cranes disassembled, lying on their side. And that's when we knew they meant business. And the only way we could get into the building, of course, was to show some form of, residency. At which point, we were served, and we still said, no, we're not going to go. So the one day, the come to Jesus meeting, we wound up having to go to court, and there were about 12 of us that we adamantly said, no way. We have our toothbrushes. When you're ready to knock this building down, we'll leave. But we've been through this so many times, we know this is a rehearsal again. So the court appearance, Nancy was the most vocal, and she led the group. And the court document had her maiden name on it, Hammerschmidt, and the judge recognized her name. The judge was a former student of Nancy's father at Poly High School.
And he felt sorry for
So
her.
he called on Nancy to represent the group. And being the drama queen that Nancy is, she proceeds to tell this horrific story, embellishing it, and we're all
Well, it was
hiding our
sad.
faces. At which point, halfway through it, literally, the judge gavelled down and said, and wanted more evidence from the various other members of our group. And he said, this couldn't be all true. And of course, now we're sort of stuck in this vortex and telling this story we all had just been told. So we all tied it together. And the judge understood. And he gavelled down and said, you have 6 months to vacate.
Wow.
Because even though we got all these prior notices,
And didn't
we
cost
kept
us anything.
paying rent.
Yeah.
And the city kept taking the checks. So each time we would pay, it reset the meter. And ultimately, that's why this thing ran out over a period of about 2 to 3 years. Well, that last legal document that was hand delivered to each of us, that's when we said, okay, great, obviously we're going to have to, put some skin in the game now. And that's when we made the court appearance. And ultimately, it was that extended period of time, because remember, the cranes were just a few feet away. And we knew from reading of the articles in the local press, they were gonna turn this into a parking lot.
They were gonna try.
Yeah, and apparently that's when the Redevelopment Agency, along with another, I think, local government group, got together, got the historical designation for the inn, and I believe that's, in fact, I know that's when Mr. Roberts came in and ultimately bought it. But had it not been for that extended period of time that we remained tenants, this was
Who knows
a
what would
place
happen.
that was destined to be
Mess.
torn down.
I don't think the city would ever allow that. I know most of us would not.
Yes, yeah.
That's why we have foundations and friends and all that stuff.
Is the story about the bagpipes true?
The bagpipes. I don't know the
The very
story.
last people to leave the building were serenaded by bagpipes.
I don't recall that.
Oh,
I don't
no.
recall that.
No, that's such a good story.
Tell us the story.
That's it. They're all being forced to leave the building at the last minute, and somebody hires bagpipers, like in a funeral.
Oh my
You know, and he's playing the funeral dirge as you all pour out the building for the last time.
I don't recall that. I apologize. Yeah,
Well,
Don't know the bagpipe story, Barbara.
And the one that lived here also was the one that's been on the art, I think she's deceased now. The one who played the harp.
Jane. Oh, no, Joanne Mercero.
Yes,
oh yeah,
yes.
the artist.
Oh,
Right.
she played all the time in the lobby and at dinner. It was beautiful.
That's not the bagpipes,
But-
sweetheart.
No. She was a harp player, but she was such an artist too. Yeah, it was,
Yes, she played the harp. Oh,
we
yeah.
always say that
Yeah.
6 months, and it was really awful, it's leaving period, it was just awful. And the judge also said to us, I understand, where do you live after you live in the mission?
Right. That was his farewell speech to us. He empathized, he felt our pain.
Oh, and I've been asking for years, so please, you guys, finish the Chinese brick houses over here. Get those they'd sell in a minute. Everything's still inside, it's good stuff. But finish those off, oh my Lord, we'd move in a second. And then when the 3,000-foot lofts up top, they opened up all those, and have you ever seen that beautiful, have you ever been in the big loft meeting rooms upstairs that are not public? In the middle of one of them is the most gorgeous, anybody who loves an office and a home office, in the middle of
Those
one
on the
of them
rotunda
is the
side?
most beautiful, gorgeous, all mahogany, in the middle of the whole thing, self-contained, with the fireplace and all of the working area. I mean, who wouldn't want to have that? It's just beautiful. Oh, and all of those, so I says, people will buy these, we've been asking to buy for a long time, because we would be back in a second. In fact, we would never have left if they didn't just leave it, and, of course, they have to open up the fourth floor, those are where you get all your money. Our room was $190 a month, and now it's, $800 a night. Yeah, it's still different.
So what year did they actually
Yeah.
vacate? What year did you have to vacate?
We left the year we left, I'm going to say is 1976.
When did you go,
The
Brenda?
reason I'm asking is because he moved in here in '76.
Oh, did you, Dan?
What?
Dan moved in.
Dan moved into
Dan
the inn
lived here
in
from
76.
'76 to
Oh,
'80.
you were in the apartments, right, Dan? Yeah, those didn't last long because we could smell food in all the hallways, and, people who were still hoteling didn't appreciate the smell.
So
So
they
we
allowed
closed
tenants
those.
coming back in after they forced us out.
Yeah.
With the roaches and the rats and
Oh, my heavens.
hot water.
No, but that's, the apartments came later, Rex, much later. Yeah, that was why.
Dan,
Yeah,
Did you have roaches?
Ellen Bynum was in one of those too. Yeah, we have several teacher friends that rented those.
Pardon me, I'm sorry, I'll repeat the question. Her question was, what year,
It's repeating
the question was, what year did we move? And my response was 1976. At which point, I believe, Marcia, correct me if I'm wrong,
Yeah.
that's shortly thereafter, Dan moved in.
Right.
And I was unaware that tenants were coming into the inn as we were going out.
No, they were here while we were here. We don't have that, I don't remember the exit date. We were there, we were a long
We
time
moved to the
there.
mountains in 77th Street.
Yeah, 77, we did go to the mountain, but they had the apartments before it was closed. Because once it was closed to everybody.
Dan,
For
were you on
8
the
years,
first-
it took 8 years for
Were you on
them.
the first floor, Dan?
No, I was in
They were on the first and
third
second.
floor.
Third floor?
Yeah,
Okay.
overlooking
Spanish wing?
the swimming pool.
Oh, well, you got one of the better up
Well,
apartments, that's good.
That's news. I was unaware, as I
Yeah.
said, Marcia, that they were still allowing individual long-term leasing once we left.
No, no one was allowed, it was liability. When everybody went, we were all locked, everybody had to get out. The apartments were there before we left, so maybe,
I left in 70.
yeah, nothing happened after, when they closed it down, they closed it, maybe we left later, I don't know.
No.
Anyway, yeah, they had apartments for a couple of years, and then it was they were cute, and it was a great idea.
Where were the apartments?
On second and third floor, that's where Ellen was, she was on the second floor, he was on the third floor. Yeah, there were several teachers that lived on those areas.
Madeline lived here too, from, what's the name of the bar that she owned? I don't know.
We didn't know Madeline. Yeah.
Yeah, that was after you.
We knew.
He had
we-
no idea you lived here, and you didn't have any
Right,
idea he lived
right.
here. And we know each other, this
Right.
is
We
weird.
lived in the same complex.
Well,
as my
there's
mother
always
for
something
20
going
years,
on.
Canyon Crest.
And I really liked it, because there's always a party going on somewhere.
What was that, Jared? I'm sorry.
Can we take questions in the front?
Yes.
Was there ever anything going in the building adjacent? That's
Will you-
part of the mission also, right? But,
Okay.
or has that been vacant all that time?
The question was there ever any development to the building to the north, which would be the bridge, the concrete bridge connecting? From what I understand when we were here, history has it that that's where a lot of the employees at the time
Yeah.
lived. I understand that the predominantly was an Asian based employee group at the time, or a period of time. And if I'm not mistaken, I think the motif, even some of the furnishings and some of the artwork in parts of the inn were quite heavily
Are
influenced.
you talking about the 6th Street Bridge right here, the cute little
No.
bridge, or a bigger,
The
the big one?
facilities, the facilities.
Yeah.
I
in
got
that-
it.
in
Okay.
that section.
You know, they also had talked about, early on, they were going to take out the townhouses that have been here forever, and put regular, like, neighborhoods in, and they fought that right away, didn't want to do that. But, I just wish, I know that if they finished off all the available things that are just empty, you know they'd be gone in a minute. Just in a minute.
They used to
Just
have a business called the Snow Goose, but that was really nice. When they started building,
Yeah,
What is your name?
Marlene,
Marlene?
yeah.
Marlene's comment was in reference to one of the retail shops on the Main Street
Yeah.
side, the west end of the mall, or the west end of the inn. It was called the Snow Goose. And it was a Scandinavian, European interior design, accessories, home accessories. We knew the owners, Tom and Tom. And it's funny because we were on the 4th floor on the rotunda side above the Snow Goose on the 4th floor. And oftentimes, any of their damaged merchandise, chairs,
Which wasn't
appliances,
really damaged, they were like, none.
we go into the store and we met and went to their parties, the parties at their home, and got to know them quite well. And oftentimes they would give us some of the blemished product they couldn't sell.
very
But the Snow Goose was a
Nothing
very,
wrong with
very popular shop, extremely popular and very successful.
Is there any other questions?
I was gonna just
One more, I believe, or two?
When, no, I just.
Go right ahead. Go.
When they started the renovation.
Wait.
CR Highlanders?
Oh, hold on one second, if you would, sir. I'm sorry. She has one more part of her question.
When they started all the renovations, there was a restaurant called Christopher's. Was that, were you familiar with that?
And she's asking about a restaurant called
Not
Christopher's.
in here, but I think where Prohibition is or something.
I don't recall a restaurant where Prohibition currently is located.
Oh, you mean where Prohibition
I
is?
think so, yeah.
They've had several over there, and yes, they did have a Christopher's.
It was very-
Yes.
yeah. But then when all this
Redevelopment took
redevelopment,
place?
a lot of places
Left.
because it was such
Right.
a mess.
Yeah, there was a big transition of a lot of businesses coming and going during that redevelopment phase. Your question, sir?
I was just commenting about the bagpipes. You made it sound like it was a mystery where bagpipes would come from around here, but UCR are the Highlanders, and they do have bagpipes.
That's true.
What
That's right.
did he say?
His comment was the question earlier, the statement earlier about the bagpipe send-off. And the UCR mascot is the Highlander. So there could be some commonality there.
Perhaps one of the Highlanders lived here.
Could very well have been.
Yeah.
I would say it's historically feasible.
Thank you, Jared.
But not verifiable.
Good point, yes. We won't speculate on that issue, but yes, you're right. Yes, ma'am.
There have long been local rumors that Aunt Alice still walks here at the
What'd you
Mission
say?
Inn. When you were living here, were there any sightings or any sensing of Aunt Alice's presence?
Brenda raises her hand. She lived in Aunt Alice's suite. Go ahead, Brenda.
Well, give her something to
No, I would have
Here.
loved a visit from Aunt Alice. I would have.
Wait, Brenda, wait, they can't hear you.
Oh, I can
Speak
hear
up,
me.
dear, yes.
You might want to repeat the question.
The question was about Aunt Alice sightings.
Did Brenda ever meet her?
Did Brenda ever meet her?
Yeah.
I would have loved to, but no,
Yes.
she never visited me. And if I lived there probably 2.5 years, because you hopscotched around until you found the place you wanted to
Right.
live. And I lived there about 2.5 years in Aunt Alice's. She never visited me. So she would have.
Yeah, she moved on.
Any last questions?
I have a question. You didn't mention this, but are you guys married? Are you a couple or? You seem very close.
Is that the most?
The question,
Is that the most complicated question of the evening?
thank you, Jared. Yes, it is.
Answer that earlier.
No, it's our lives are open books. That's a great question.
Well,
Thank
what
you.
did you ask?
The question was, just hold on. These Germans, they're pushy. Nancy and I were married, yes. We were an item, we still are. We were married for many, many years, divorced for many, many years, and we're now dating one another for the last 10 years. So life just got moving a straight line. Yes. Nancy was my 8th grade English teacher.
Last question from Barbara here.
Well, I got two questions. One,
Does that answer your question?
did you know Mrs. Roberta Richardson?
Roberta Richardson.
Roberta Richardson.
Roberta
She
Richardson.
was in her 80s when she lived here. She was Aunt Alice's daughter-in-law.
No.
I didn't, who did she?
Roberta Richardson.
Roberta Richardson.
Did we know her? That
She
was
was
the question.
Aunt Alice's
No,
daughter-in-law.
but there was another niece of hers that was in the inn, but she was like real reclusive. Nobody knew her very well.
Oh. And my second question is, do you remember anything about the mural in the Banks drugstore?
No, I don't remember anything about
It
the
really
mural.
was 25 feet long, and it's old Rancho days, and there's Spanish dancers and oxen
Oh, my
and people in
heavens.
beautiful clothes, and they had to cut it out of the wall to take it out.
No,
Oh.
don't recall that.
You're
Don't
just
be
hoping
coming.
you were here and remembered that event.
No,
I
it's-
can't
yes.
find anybody in this
No.
whole town who
The
remembers.
Banks was my favorite hangout,
Yeah.
riding our bicycles in from
I mean, it was right
Rubidoux.
there behind
Yeah.
the soda fountain.
Right,
Yeah.
well,
In the
see, that's
Banks.
because
Well-
Bruna, let me explain that.
Well,
Bruna Banks and I graduated together.
Did you?
And she was a Spanish dancer.
Yes,
And
right.
that was her big thing, and her parents got her a lot of lessons, and we were both dance majors.
Was she
But she
Phil
was
Banks'
Spanish
wife?
dancing.
Was she Phil Banks' wife or daughter?
Wife
Miss
or daughter?
Bruna, was she
Phil
Phil Banks' wife or daughter?
No, Bruna is his daughter.
Daughter.
Yeah, yes, And she was, a dance major and went on to do that for a while, but I was telling Rex on the way
On the way
over,
over, we were talking
I
about
can't, no one has
Funny.
seen her at all, any of the reunions, and we have awesome reunions.
Great question.
Mary Carpenter, I think, is in touch with her, if you know Mary Carpenter.
Yep, the Banks drugstore
Great
was owned by
story.
a family, yeah.
Great question, Bob.
Okay.
I'm taking my back.
I'll introduce Barbara to them. This is Barbara Burns. She's written a book, a historical book
Alice.
about Aunt Alice.
She was also a
Lots of
docent trainer, local
Yeah.
historian.
Wonderful.
And my high school boyfriend wrote the book you've seen in the bookstore on the Frank Miller's summer house. He bought that,
Beach.
the beautiful, gorgeous
Roger,
summer house that
Roger
goes,
Jones.
hangs over those
Yes.
cliffs in
you
Laguna
did,
Beach.
Roger Jones, that's
Yes.
right.
And he's
Yeah.
deceased now, and I'm
He just
really
passed
unhappy
away
about
about a
that.
year and a
He's
half
a neat
ago.
guy. But anyway, he wrote that book because he lived there for many, many, many years, just sold it right before, probably about 5 years before COVID is when he sold it. Actually, right after the 2008 thing.
Well, that was a global
yeah.
recession. Yeah.
That's when he sold it, but that was gorgeous. In fact, the art museum took lots of field trips down there so they could see it, because it literally, they have their own beach and cove and everything, but the home is gorgeous. And he bought that not many years after, because he's a restoration guy. He's restored many homes in town. He's
Right,
Yeah.
apartments on University Avenue.
So
Towards Mount
those,
Rubidoux.
and there are several books in there that are written by students from Riverside. As they got older, they had memories of this and memories of that, and yeah.
And just to confirm, what we're talking about is Villa Rockledge.
Yeah, she's
Villa Rockledge.
Yeah, Rockland.
Yes,
Yes.
oh, yes, Villa Rockledge,
Any
yeah,
last questions?
beautiful.
Well, thank you very much, Rex, and thank you.
Thank you.